I'm not like other tech YouTubers. I don't have 69 iPhones laying around, and no large company is interested in sponsoring this channel. Yet. So when my sister said she wanted to buy a new iPhone and asked for my advice, I had to do a good research because I don't know about you, but I don't like wasting money. Almost exactly a year ago, I made a video titled What iPhone to Get in 2023. TLDR is, I said the iPhone 13 is the best choice for most of us. I also suggested the latest Pro model for those who really need to underline that they are professionals, and the 13 mini for those who don't care if they're watching Oppenheimer on a 6-inch screen or on a 5.4-inch one. Don't tell that to Christopher Nolan, please. So I finally chose the best model for my sister, and this is it. The iPhone 14. Whoa, but in the last video you said the iPhone 13 is a better choice. It has the same chip, both have 12 megapixel cameras, and in terms of battery, you also have to charge it every night, but the iPhone 13 is cheaper. Why would you choose the 14? Yeah, you're right, they are both very similar, but the price difference is not that big anymore. It's less than $100 without sales, and you get one additional GPU core, 6 GB of RAM, and with apps today getting more and more advanced, it's more and more useful to get this additional power. It also has crash detection. You know, if I was choosing for myself, I probably wouldn't care that much, but it's for my sister, so it does make a difference. And also, it has a photonic engine. What is photonic engine, you ask? It's this. It basically improves night photography. It's not a big difference, but it's something. So yeah, the list of differences between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14 is not that long. Even the design. Besides some color options, yeah, it's almost exactly the same. Both are just over 6 inches. But as I said, with the price difference not being that big anymore, it's enough to satisfy.
That's what she said!
Okay, let's move into the details. Opening the iPhone 14 box, you find it pretty simple. There's just the phone and the lightning cable, and this is actually the last iPhone to get the lightning port. The next ones will all have USB-C, which is much easier to use with other devices. The box doesn't have a charger, but again, it's not a big deal. The iPhone 14 doesn't charge super fast. It takes about 30 minutes to get to 50% and about an hour to fully charge. Some Xiaomi phones use up to 90 watts chargers. This one tops at about 20 watts, so you can use any charging brick you have, and it won't make much difference. But even though the battery capacity isn't huge, it lasts well because the iPhones are really good at using the power efficiently, thanks to Apple's software design and its own processors. The iPhone 14 also has 15-watt wireless charging and a MagSafe, which are handy. So while charging might not be the quickest, the overall battery situation is really good because of how well it uses its power. Talking about the design, I really like it. I know some people argue that Apple is lazy and just repeating the same design on and on again, but honestly, why change something that works? I mean, look at the Porsche 911 for example. They didn't change much over decades. Porsche is focused on perfecting something that proved to work. That's why some people say that it's the best car to drive in automotive history. It's well balanced, and it looks good. Imagine if they tried to change it every year. It wouldn't make sense. And I believe it's the same case with modern smartphones. We know what works and what doesn't, and the 6.1-inch screen is just the perfect size, in my opinion. It's practically the same size as my iPhone 14 Pro, and honestly, the differences between them are minimal. Both phones look great. There's no denying that. Just, the iPhone 14 has a notch, while the iPhone 14 Pro has moved to the dynamic island. But the overall appearance remains consistent with the previous iPhone models. And let's be honest, you're gonna put a case on it anyway. Unless you're a psycho. The iPhone 14's body is made of aluminum, retains the lightning port, and includes the mute switch. As for the cameras, we'll dive deeper into that shortly, but it's important to note that the iPhone 14 comes with two 12-megapixel cameras, a wide and an ultra-wide lens, but it lacks the telephoto lens for long-distance photography. It has an IP68 rating, meaning it's water-resistant and can handle dust or sand without issues. Construction-wise, I must say it's pretty well done. Now, one bonus thing I wanted to add is the speakers. I feel like it's often overlooked by journalists reviewing this phone, but these stereo speakers sound incredibly good. Trust me, they sound better than some flagship phones that came in 2024. Now, the screen is a bit of a hot topic. It's got an amazing OLED with top-notch colors and viewing angles, but the refresh rate sticks at 60 Hz. So I did a little experiment. You've probably heard some folks making a big deal about Apple sticking to 60Hz while other manufacturers are moving to 90 or even 120Hz even on the cheaper phones. So I set my iPhone 14 Pro to only refresh at 60Hz to see how long it would take me to get used to it again. You know, I wanted to see if people were overreacting. Day 1, it was rough. I almost felt dizzy using the phone. By day 2, I was kinda starting to get used to it, but something still felt off. A week in, and I almost don't notice any difference anymore, except when I'm unlocking the phone. Then the slow refresh is super visible. It feels like I've seen that animation a million times, and that's why it's super hard to ignore the 60Hz. Wrapping up, 60Hz is not the end of the world. If you've never used faster screens before, it's not a biggie. Most laptops, even MacBook Airs, are 60Hz and I haven't heard many complaints. If you're coming from 120Hz, you'll adjust to it. Just, it takes a bit of time. For me, what matters more is how the system runs. Jumping between apps, smooth animations, no delays, that's what I really care about. Way more than the refresh rate. Refresh. That's super hard to say. Unlocking this phone and using it for app logins and paying for stuff, you've got Face ID, and it works flawlessly. It's true. Fingerprint readers on other phones might be quicker, but I can't really complain about missing one when the face scanner works this well. This device works with a similar processor to the iPhone 13. It's the A15 Bionic chip, but with an extra graphics core, and instead of 4, it has 6GB of RAM. I'll say that when it comes to how fast and smooth it runs, many Android phones from 2024 can't keep up with this one. This is because the iOS system is specifically made to work well with its own company's processors. Comparing these phones to Android phones is kinda like comparing pears to apples. So there's nothing lacking in performance. I also noticed that the phone doesn't get too hot even when playing games for a long time. And this is when you can see and appreciate how good this phone is at saving battery life. Honestly, if you don't use this phone a lot, like spending hours on TikTok or Instagram, the battery can last up to a day and a half or even 2 days before needing a recharge. The camera on this phone has 2 lenses, a main one and an ultra-wide. The main lens is 12 megapixel with a brightness level of 1.5, which is a bit brighter than the one in iPhone 13. It also has a special photonic engine feature, making pictures look better lit and slightly improving quality. The ultra-wide lens hasn't changed from the last model. It's also 12 megapixel, but with a brightness level of 2.4. Photos taken with these cameras turn out really well. They work great in almost any light conditions, and at this price, you'd be hard-pressed to find anything better. As something extra, I've compared photos taken by this phone, the iPhone 14, with those taken by the iPhone 14 Pro. This way you can see for yourself if you can really tell the difference between this phone and the top model of the same series. So enjoy this little slideshow and I'll be back in a few moments. So listen, if you already have one of the newer iPhone models, like I'm talking iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, then buying this one doesn't make much sense in my opinion. It is a slightly refined version of the previous model, but I bet that most people wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between them. But if you really need an upgrade, The old smartphone is getting efficiency issues, or the battery is getting weak, but you don't want to spend money on the overpriced iPhone 15, you're looking for something that shows up on sales and you can get a better deal on it, the iPhone 14 is almost perfect in this situation. If you can live with the 60Hz screen, don't need the telephoto lens, and don't mind the slow charging speeds, then you'll really be satisfied with this. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm Miles, you are now miles ahead, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Wait, this doesn't switch the camera off.